everyone, and welcome to my June wrap-up. That's the month. It's hard to tell what month we're in these days. Gotta tell you, June was not one of my best reading months. I only read 6 books, which is like the average number of books I usually read a month, but over these past 3 months of quarantine, I read 10 books one month, and then 13 one month and 13 another month, so I was hoping to get into the double digits in June as well, but it just didn't really happen. I think I probably burned myself out a little bit by reading so much all those other months, and I probably just needed a little bit of a break. So yeah, let's just jump into the books that I read. So the first book that I finished in June was The One by Kiera Cass. This is the third and final book in the original Selection trilogy. I reread this for the first time ever, and I did a whole video discussion on this series, so if you want to learn more about the series and my thoughts on it, I will leave a link to that up in the eye in the corner. The second book that I finished in June was an audiobook, and I listened to I Must Say by Martin Short. This is his memoir slash autobiography, and the audiobook was narrated by him, and I did not know that he had a memoir. I was just scrolling through my Overdrive app and I happened to come across it, and I was really excited when I did because I grew up not so much watching as much as listening to Martin Short, because he used to voice the Cat in the Hat on PBS when I was a kid, so I would watch him every day. And then he also voiced the villain in Barbie Princess and the Pauper, which is my favorite Barbie movie, in case you were curious. So I also used to watch him on like Santa Claus 3 and stuff when I was a kid, so I really grew up with Martin Short, but I didn't know much about his life. And then I actually, at the same time that I came across this audiobook, I came across an interview that he did on Jimmy Fallon, and I had never seen him outside of his acting, and he is absolutely hilarious. Like, every single joke that he did on Jimmy Fallon was hilarious, so I just absolutely fell in love with his personality and everything. So I listened to the audiobook and I just loved it as well. I learned so much stuff about him that I did not know, because like I said, I didn't really ever watch anything of him when he wasn't just playing a character. I really liked learning about his life. It was very heartwarming at times, it was very funny at times, it was a bit sad. You just got all the emotions with this audiobook, so I would totally recommend it to anybody who is also a fan of Martin Short. I then picked up The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This is a adult murder mystery story that takes place on an old estate in the early 1900s, and we're following our character called Aidan Bishop, and basically it's set at a masquerade party, and at the end of this masquerade, Evelyn Hardcastle is murdered, and so we're following Aidan as he has to relive this day over and over and over again until he solves her murder. But the twist is that he wakes up in the body of a different guest every single day. So I actually did a full review slash discussion video for this. The first part of it was spoiler free, and then the second part included spoilers. So if you want to learn more about this book and my thoughts on it, I will leave a link to that up in the eye in the corner again if you want to go and watch it. I then picked up The Betrothed by Kiera Cass, and I'm planning on doing a review video for this also, including some spoilery thoughts in it, because I have quite a bit of thoughts on this book, and it's going to be a bit difficult to just sum them up in just a wrap-up. So basically, in this book, it is set in a fictional kingdom, and we're following our main character called Hollis, and she grew up in the palace. Like, her family was quite a noble family. They were part of the king's court, and she ends up being picked by the king to be his new queen, but then she ends up falling in love with somebody else. So obviously, if you've been on my channel for a while, you know that I really loved The Selection by Kiera Cass, and then when I reread it just this past month, I did not like it quite as much as I did the first time that I read it. So I was still really excited to pick this up because I thought maybe it would just be very entertaining and fun, and I really did hope that over all of these years that her writing may have improved a bit, but it didn't really. There wasn't any kind of world building in this, there wasn't any real character development. It was just all a letdown as far as the writing. There were no descriptions in this book except for their dresses. Literally it's the same thing in The Selection, where the only thing that this author describes is what they're wearing, and we have no sense of the world or anything around us. The other bummer thing about this book was that basically nothing happened in it. Everything that I told you is all that happens in this book and then something happens at the end, and other than that, nothing happens in this book. They just have the same conversations but in different settings. Like, there was nothing that happened in this book. And yet, at the same time, every time I put this book down, I felt an urge to pick it back up again. So I ended up giving it 3 stars, even though I have nothing good to say about it, but for some reason I still was drawn to pick it back up, and I still found myself enjoying what I was reading, even though I didn't really seem to like any of it. So I'm just as confused as you are, honestly. So that's why I do want to do like a whole spoilery review slash discussion on this book, so we can really dive into my thoughts and what it was about it that I think probably made me like it a little bit more. But I can't touch on it here because it would be spoilery. So this was the next book that I read. I then listened to another audiobook. I listened to Home by Julie Andrews, and this was also narrated by her, and once again, I super enjoyed this. I also grew up watching Julie Andrews on TV all the time, from like Mary Poppins to The Sound of Music to Princess Diaries. I loved all of it, and so, but again, she was one of those people that like I really admired her, but I didn't know anything really about her life. Once again, I just really enjoyed reading this and learning about her life and her growing up. This book is basically from her childhood up until she started to get into movies. I think it ends right when she is like doing the role of Mary Poppins, and then she wrote a second book, which I'm currently listening to, which is called Homework, and that's from like where we left off in this book to the rest of her life, I assume. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and once again, I would just recommend it to anybody who is a fan of Julie Andrews. It's really hard for me to like properly discuss these books because I can't like review somebody's life, so I'm just like, yeah, it was good, you should read it. And then the final book that I read in June was Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I'm sure most people have probably either read this book or watched this film, and I am very late to the game with this, so I assume a lot of people probably already know what this is about, but just in case you don't, I'll give you a little rundown of the plot. So this is an adult thriller novel that is told from 2 perspectives. The first one is the husband's perspective, and that is told in like the current time, and then the second perspective is the wife's, and that's told through journal entries from the past leading up to the present. So at the start of this book, the husband comes home to find that his house, the front door is open, and there's been like some kind of a struggle in the living room, and his wife is completely missing. And that's basically all I'm going to tell you about the plot, because you know that I like everybody to go into thrillers blind because I think they're just so much better that way. So I actually really enjoyed this. I'd read The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn either earlier this year or last year, I can't really remember, but I really enjoyed her writing in that and the story and everything. I thought she was a great storyteller, so I wanted to see what she would do with a full-length novel because The Grown Up is just a short story, and I was very happy with this. I thought the writing was great again. I really liked the story. It kept me gripped the entire time, which was a little bit shocking because I felt like at this point I was kind of over domestic thrillers. Like, I'm just tired of reading about failed marriages and people having affairs, but for some reason, even though, I mean, that wasn't a spoiler what I just told you, like you probably could have guessed, but even though that was stuff that went down in this book, for some reason I still found myself totally engaged with it, probably because of her really good writing. So yeah, I really liked this, and then the ending happened. I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the ending because on one hand, I hated it. Like, I did not like the ending at all. However, at the same time, I felt like the ending made sense for the characters, so it's like, can I really fault it for not liking it because it seemed almost realistic, so that should be like a good thing. So I'm just kind of, I don't really know, but yeah, it was a bit frustrating when I got to the ending, but it seemed like it almost made sense for the characters, so I guess maybe it was a good thing. I don't know. You'll have to tell me if you've read this book what you thought of the ending, but I still don't really know what to think. Either way, for the majority of this book until the ending, I really was gripped with the story and with the characters, and her writing is just, she has really good writing. Like, that's probably the best thing about her books so far, is that I just love her writing. So I definitely plan to pick up more of her books in the future since I've enjoyed the 2 that I have read. So yeah, those are all of the books that I read in June. Leave me a comment down below and let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. I'd love to discuss them with you in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!
You hear that, Samson?